My name is Jennifer and I never planned to lose control of my own heart. It's strange how a single night can change the rhythm of everything you thought you knew about yourself. I can still feel it, the warmth of his breath when he said my name. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, just a sound carried between two people standing too close in the quiet. But somehow it did. That night had started so ordinary. I was in the kitchen, the house still half asleep, my hands resting on the counter. The air smelled of coffee and rain. My mind drifted, and before I even realized it, I was remembering the way David had looked at me the evening before. His eyes had this calm, steady warmth, like he could see through all the noise in my head and still stay quiet inside it. It had been a long time since anyone looked at me like that. Marcus, my husband, had been away for nearly 2 years now, serving overseas. We spoke less and less these days, mostly about bills, the lawn, the roof, never about us, never about how empty the bed felt. David moved into my guest house 3 weeks ago, 27, polite, quiet, with this kind of unspoken sadness that made you want to ask questions you shouldn't. He told me once he'd just come out of something painful, a breakup. Maybe that's why I felt safe around him, like two strangers standing in the ruins of something, quietly rebuilding without saying it out loud. Before I begin, let me ask you, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to see how far my stories travel. That morning, I was running late for a meeting downtown. The sun hadn't even risen properly when my car decided to betray me right at the gate. I sat there, cursing softly under my breath, trying to dial the tow service when I heard footsteps approaching. Need a hand? It was him, David. He had on a grey hoodie and jeans, hair still damp from a shower. There was something gentle about how he spoke, like every word came from a place that meant well. I told him I was fine, but my voice betrayed me. He smiled. That calm kind of smile that makes the world feel softer for a moment. He leaned over the hood, sleeves pushed up, the morning light tracing the veins on his arm. And, for some reason, my breath caught. Not because of anything he did, just the way the moment felt. Too quiet, too close. He got the car to start within minutes. When I thanked him, his hand brushed mine just slightly, but enough to leave something behind. Something that followed me all day, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the sound of his voice when he said, "You're good to go." I told myself I was imagining things. But when I closed my eyes, I saw his face again. The way his eyes lingered. The way my heart betrayed me with every beat. That should have been the end of it. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the calm in his voice and the warmth that somehow stayed. Before I continue, I just want to thank all my amazing subscribers for helping this channel grow. These stories take time and emotion to create. And if you're feeling this one already, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in complicated love. And don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you'll always be the first to know when I drop a new story. That evening, as I walked past the guest house window, I noticed his light was still on. And for just a heartbeat, our eyes met. Through the glass. Neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. Something in me whispered, "This is where everything changes." The next morning, I couldn't shake the way he'd looked at me through that window. It wasn't just a glance. It was a pause that lingered somewhere deep, where words don't go. All through the day, that moment stayed with me. Soft, haunting, impossible to explain. By late afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the pantry holding a jar of pasta and wondering when I had decided to cook for him. Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was loneliness. Wearing a disguise. Either way, I wanted to do something kind, something small enough to mean nothing, yet warm enough to mean everything. I spent almost an hour deciding what to wear. Something casual, but not too casual. Something that didn't try too hard, yet somehow made me feel like myself again. I caught my reflection in the mirror, adjusting my hair, and whispered, "You're overthinking this, Jen." But my heart didn't believe me. The kitchen filled with the scent of garlic and butter. The pan hissed as I stirred slowly, feeling every small sound echo louder in the quiet house. I didn't even realize I was smiling. It had been so long since I smiled while cooking. Somewhere in the middle of stirring, I caught myself humming and I froze like my own happiness startled me. When I carried the food to his door, my hands trembled just a little. I knocked gently, once, twice, and then he opened the door. His smile was enough to make my pulse skip. "Hey, I thought I'd bring you dinner," I said, pretending to sound casual. He blinked, surprised, grateful, and then stepped aside to let me in. The air inside his apartment felt different, softer somehow. Books on the table, faint music from a speaker, a candle burning low like it had been forgotten. He took the dish from me, and when our fingers brushed, it felt like a quiet spark under my skin. We both laughed, that nervous kind of laugh people use when they don't know what to say. It should have been nothing, but in that silence, after the laughter faded, it didn't feel like nothing. We ate together, sitting across from each other, talking about simple things. Work, travel, favorite songs. He told me he used to play guitar, that he stopped after his last relationship ended. And when he smiled, there was something gentle and broken behind it. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't. Instead, I asked if he missed her. He shook his head slowly. "Not her," he said softly. "Just the idea of being seen." Something in that sentence stayed with me because for the first time in years, I felt seen, too. We talked until the food went cold, until laughter filled the small space like music, and for a few seconds, I forgot that I was someone's wife. I forgot the distance, the silence, the ache that had become home. It felt innocent. But my heart didn't believe me. When I finally stood to leave, he walked me to the door. Our hands brushed again. Barely, softly, but my breath caught all the same. "Thank you for dinner," he said, his voice quiet, almost shy, and I smiled, not trusting myself to speak. Back in my room, the house felt too still. The clock ticked louder than usual. I looked at the framed photo of Marcus on the nightstand, his uniform. His smile that used to make me feel safe, and suddenly I felt guilty for missing a stranger more than the man I married. My phone buzzed, a message from David. Thanks for dinner. I haven't laughed like that in a long time. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, then put the phone away because sometimes the words you don't send say the most. But deep down I knew it. This was how it began. And part of me was already too far gone to stop it. If only I had known that one small dinner could turn into the one memory I'd replay for the rest of my life. Be honest with me. Have you ever felt guilty for something you hadn't even done yet? Tell me in the comments below. I read and replied to every single one of them. When David asked if I wanted to come with him to a friend's birthday weekend outside town, I laughed at first. Me spending a weekend away with my tenant. It sounded ridiculous. But the way he said it, gentle, hopeful, almost like he needed me there, I told myself it was harmless, just two adults escaping the noise for a bit. The drive started quiet, the kind of quiet that holds too many thoughts. But then the music came on. He sang along, off-key, carefree, and I found myself laughing. That laugh, it didn't sound like a married woman's laugh. It sounded like a girl who hadn't been seen in years. The road curved through fields of gold and forgotten promises. He talked about his dreams, a photography studio by the lake, a life that didn't feel borrowed. And for a moment, I forgot I was supposed to belong to someone else. By the time we reached the hotel, the sky had opened up. Rain fell hard like it was washing away the excuses I'd built. They'd overbooked. Only one suite left. He looked at me uncertain. I looked back, pretending it didn't matter, but my heart, it was anything but calm. That night, the rain didn't stop. We sat by the window, a small lamp between us. 2 cups of untouched tea. He told me about the first time he lost someone. I told him about the first time I realized my husband had already left me, even while he was still home. The silence that followed was heavier than the thunder. His hand brushed mine. I didn't pull away. And suddenly, there was nothing in that room but breath. When I woke up, the rain had stopped. The light came in soft, like it didn't want to disturb what was left of the night. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But then I saw his jacket folded neatly over the chair, and my heart knew it hadn't been. My phone buzzed. A message from my husband. I miss you. Deployment extended. I stared at the screen, realizing how far apart missing and loving can be. And that's when it hit me. Some lines, once crossed, can't be erased. Hey, if you've made it this far into my story, I already know you feel things deeply. So, I want to tell you something special. There's something I've never shared publicly before. There are some stories too raw, too unspoken, to ever be shared here. And if you've ever wished these moments could last longer, I made something just for you. I put together a private collection of forbidden love stories. Longer, deeper, and far more intimate than anything I can post on YouTube. I call it Confessions of Forbidden Love. It's not public. Only those who know where to look can find it. So, if you're ready to step into those secret confessions that can't be spoken out loud, The secret link is just below in the comment section. Go ahead. I dare you to read them while they're still available. Now, let's get back to my story. It started as a whisper, a neighbor's voice, carried on the wind, harmless chatter over a garden fence. But whispers have a way of finding the wrong ears, and mine reached halfway across the world. Weeks after that weekend, life tried to return to normal. I folded laundry. I cooked dinner. I smiled at David like nothing had changed, but everything had. He was still there, living downstairs. But now, every sound from his room felt like a memory pressing against the walls. Then one afternoon as I walked back from the cafe, I saw Mrs. Carter, my neighbor, watching. She smiled too long, too knowingly, and beside her coffee cup, my reflection looked guilty. Days later, my phone rang, the kind of ring that freezes the air around you. It was Marcus. His voice came through the static, low, tired, but edged with something I hadn't heard in years. Suspicion. Someone told me things. Jen, he said. About you. About some man staying at the house. My mouth went dry. Every word I wanted to say tangled inside my throat. I just want to know, he said softly. Is there something you need to tell me? For a moment, I wanted to scream at him. Tell him he had no right to sound wounded. Not after leaving me with years of silence, but the truth was heavier than pride, because I had crossed something sacred, and guilt doesn't care who's to blame first. When the call ended, the house felt smaller. Even the walls seemed to whisper. David came upstairs not long after. He didn't ask what happened. He just looked at me and somehow he knew. I'll move out, he said quietly. It's better for you, for both of us. But the thought of him gone, of those empty mornings without his footsteps, felt like losing air itself. I wanted to tell him to stay. I wanted to tell him I was already too far gone. But all I said was, do what you think is right. That night, I sat alone, staring at the window where his light used to be. The rain returned, tapping softly against the glass. It sounded almost like forgiveness. But maybe it was just the world reminding me, nothing stays hidden forever. If you were in my shoes right now, what would you do? Be honest with me in the comments. I read and reply to every single one, because sometimes hearing your hearts helps me understand mine. Just as I set my phone down, a knock echoed from downstairs. It was late, too late for anyone decent to visit. I opened the door to David's apartment, heart trembling, and the voice that came through the darkness froze me where I stood. Jennifer, it was Marcus. Marcus didn't yell. That almost made it worse. He stood there in the doorway in uniform, tired from 1,000 miles of sand and silence. His eyes weren't angry. They were empty. And I realized sometimes silence cuts deeper than rage ever could. We didn't argue. There were no slam doors, no tears spilled on purpose. Just the sound of him placing his wedding ring on the table and saying quietly, I don't hate you, Jen. I just don't know who we became. He left the next morning. No goodbye kiss, no backward glance, just the echo of boots on hardwood, and then nothing. David moved out a week later. He didn't say much either. Maybe he thought leaving would make things easier for me. Maybe it did, but the silence he left behind filled every room like perfume I couldn't wash off. Sometimes I'd walk to the guest house after dark just to stand in the doorway where his laughter used to live. I'd trace my fingers along the counter, the same one where I once set down a bowl of soup, innocently, foolishly, not knowing it would change everything. Love isn't always a storm. Sometimes it's a quiet ache that lingers long after the thunder fades. And maybe he wasn't meant to stay. Maybe he was just meant to remind me that I was still alive. There are nights when I still hear his voice. That gentle, steady warmth that made me forget who I was supposed to be. I don't chase those memories anymore. I just let them visit like ghosts who don't mean harm. I've made peace with my choices, not because they were right, but because they were real. And sometimes real is all a lonely heart can handle. If I could speak to him one last time, I wouldn't ask for forgiveness. I'd just thank him for reminding me what it felt like to be seen. Some people bring you back to life just long enough to remind you that you were dying. Before we end tonight, I just want to thank every single one of you who's been part of this channel. These stories take time, emotion, and courage to share. If you felt this one in your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes in the complexity of love. Turn on that notification bell so you'll know when my next story drops, because the next one might just be your favorite yet. You know, after everything I've told you tonight, I've realized some stories aren't meant to stay buried. Some are too raw, too honest to ever be shared out here for everyone to hear. But I kept a few of them, the ones that still make my heart race when I think about them. I gathered them together into something private, something only for those who understand what it feels like to want what you shouldn't, and to love anyway. I call it Confessions of Forbidden Love. These stories go deeper, longer, slower, and far more intimate than anything I could ever post here. So, if you're still here with me, listening to the quiet after the storm, maybe you were meant to find them. The secret link is waiting down below in the comments section. Go ahead. Let yourself feel something again.